Hi, and welcome to another episode of pianoTV. So today we are going to get some songwriting inspiration. We're going to take a look at 5 different composers who have been inspired by nature and the outdoors and things like that. We're going to talk about what it was about nature that inspired them, how it inspired their music, and we're going to listen to an audio example of a song they wrote that was inspired by nature. This is actually the second installment in a series. I guess it's now a series because there's 2 of them. But some of you might remember a video I did a while ago called Composers Who Were Inspired by Their Cats, and that was kind of like a silly video. This one's maybe a little less silly, but they're like peas in a pod. So if you haven't seen that one, check it out. Anyway, let's get started. So now that it's minus 30 where I live, I can't help but be confronted by Mother Nature on a daily basis. There's snow everywhere. And I just started thinking, well, okay, so what composers in the past have been inspired by the snow, have been inspired by lakes and waters and oceans and other aspects of nature? And then I started researching it a little bit, and it turns out basically all composers are inspired by nature because, go figure, it's nature. So even though there's a lot of music out there that's directly inspired by nature, I wanted to focus in on just 5 composers and 5 pieces for this video, and we'll look at the stories and the tunes, and it'll be a good time. Claude Debussy, a French composer from the 19th 20th century, turn of the century, he was heavily inspired by nature, which you can see in all kinds of song titles, but I've listed some of the common ones up here, like La Mer, Nuages, Clair de Lune, etc. In his letters and writings, Debussy was super passionate to merge the beauty and wonder of nature with music. He sought to perfectly blend the two, and the majority of his music strove to encapsulate nature in some shape. So I've got a quote up here by Debussy that just goes, "There's nothing more musical than a sunset. He who feels what he sees will find no more beautiful example of development in all that book which, alas, musicians read but too little, the book of nature." For our musical example, I want to share with you one of my favorite preludes by Debussy, the Submerged Cathedral. I'm not going to pronounce the French if I can avoid it. It was modeled after the myth of Ys, it's kind of like Atlantis. It's like a whole sunken island civilization thing. So basically the myth goes that this cathedral, which is underwater on the island of Ys, rises up from the sea on calm and clear mornings. And when it does rise from the sea, you can hear all kinds of haunting sounds like chanting priests and chiming bells and that kind of stuff. Debussy does an awesome job conveying that mysterious spiritual feeling in this piece. He uses lots of open fifths in the intro, and he uses a pentatonic scale, which gives it this very ancient sound. The next nature-loving composer on our list is Johannes Brahms. His biographer mentions that Brahms was an avid outdoorsman, and how a lot of his compositions rose from the mountains and forests and open sky. For example, in Brahms's C minor symphony, the finale's melody represents the Alps, which Brahms was inspired by while hiking. Brahms was a big fan of walking holidays, so we called them basically holidays where he went hiking. He had a horn trio that was also nature inspired, but the thing about Brahms is he didn't believe in writing about nature. Like, you're not going to see any pieces titled The Sea or something like that, like you would with Debussy. He believed that music should be about music, not about nature, but that's not to say that he didn't draw tons of inspiration from nature. Let's take a listen to Brahms' Second Symphony in D major, which starts off very peaceful and very calm, and it later crescendos into something more exuberant. It's a beautiful work. since Brahms and Wagner hated each other, I felt it only fitting that he be our next discussion point. So Wagner lived in Zurich, Switzerland, and he would frequently hike into the Alps as well. It's thought that the cold Swiss climate helped inspire the vigor of Wagner's music. If so, it's good news for us Canadians. A couple notable operas of Wagner's deal with nature, such as the Ring of the Nibelung, usually called the Ring Cycles. It's a 15-hour. That was not a mistake. It's a 15-hour opera. And it's basically about the moral treatment of nature and the environment as a reaction to industrialism. Wagner was strongly in favor of nature and working with it and protecting it as opposed to controlling it. And these views are passionately conveyed in The Ring. So in the story, basically, the ring literally represents nature, and the bad guys want to take the ring so that they can control nature. The Flying Dutchman was another opera inspired by nature. After almost dying on a boat on a very stormy voyage, he drew on that personal experience to write in music The Legend of the Flying Dutchman, which is very similar subject matter to his personal experience. So we're gonna take a listen to the first little bit of the overture from The Flying Dutchman. That's the opening. You can really feel like the dread and the power and anxiety even in like this 30-second clip. It summons this like rumbling, turbulent sea in this epic way that, you know, is very particular to Wagner. Antonio Vivaldi is our Baroque selection on this list. Though composers of the distant past would often enjoy nature, very few overtly wrote about it. Vivaldi, however, wrote 4 violin concerti entitled The Four Seasons, with, you know, each of the 4 concertos dealing with a season. He uses specific instrumental effects to create sounds like the rustling of leaves, or a barking dog, or a thunderstorm, or various different things throughout this. So he literally tried to recreate a sound, like a natural ambient nature sound that you would hear through his violins and other string instruments. Music like this that evokes nature with these specific types of sounds is called program music, and this set by Vivaldi was one of the earliest examples of program music. Most of us can easily recognize the first movement of Spring. It's da 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 da. Anyway, but the one I'm going to show you today is from Summer, and it's the finale of the set. It's pretty short. I think it's around 3 minutes long. It is so cool. It's so metal. I'm excited for you to hear it. Basically, the story of this finale is like the shepherd. There has been like this storm a-brewing in the other movements, and then like in the finale, the storm is like full on, it's hitting, it's hailing, it's lightning and thunder, and the shepherd's like panicking and freaking out because, like, you know, his livelihood is dependent on the climate and the weather and stuff. So anyway, let's just take a listen to it. Though Chopin was not an outdoorsy type like some of the other guys on this list, like he was maybe more indoorsy and frail, I wanted to give a quick shout out to him because he wrote several pieces about rain. There's more than a few, but the one I want to focus on today is his Raindrop Prelude, Opus 28, number 15. So the story of this prelude is that Chopin was dreaming while playing piano. I don't know how that works, but nonetheless, he was daydreaming maybe while playing the piano during a rainstorm. He was all alone when his lady friend George Sand came home with her son, and he was like, "Yo, I just dreamed of myself being drowned in a lake with heavy drops of water dripping rhythmically on my chest." And George Sand was all like, "Hey, Frederick, you were literally just hearing the sound of raindrops on the roof, and then you imitated that in your piano music. The rest of the story I will let George Sand herself finish in her own words. She said that he denied having heard it. He was even angry that I should interpret this in terms of imitative sounds. He protested with all his might, and he was right to, against the childishness of such oral imitations. His genius was filled with the mysterious sounds of nature, but transformed into sublime equivalents in musical thought, and not through slavish imitation of the actual external sounds. Now, I just thought this was interesting, especially coming right after Vivaldi's example, where he did do direct sound imitation. So anyway, let's take a quick listen to Chopin's Raindrop Prelude, and you can hear his like raindrop imitation sound in the repeated A flat note in the left hand. And that is all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this little tour through nature and inspiration. Maybe if you're a songwriter, you found something to inspire you in this video. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and I will catch you in the next video. Hey, don't eat the seat. My cat's been chomping on like walnut shells.